In today's video, I'm going to take a look at my personal top 10 or so images that I've taken professionally. We're going to take a look at why I think they worked, how I took the shot, and hopefully give a little bit of insight into how I worked on them. So the reason I'm doing this really is that in my last video, I took a look at a lot of my old photos from when I was very much in the infancy of taking photos, when I was around 15 or so. A lot of them were pretty poor, and I ripped into them and I said all kinds of mean things about how I used to take photos. So I just thought it might actually be quite useful for me to flip it and then do it the other way and show a bunch of photos that I am very proud of and I have worked very hard on, and actually I think sort of finish off that story from me being a beginner and doing all these weird experimental things through to me being a pro, shooting for magazines and for websites and all kinds of things. So maybe this isn't going to be helpful at all, but I'm still stuck inside, so I've got to find something to do. I want to start with some product shots, actually, because I haven't shown a lot of my product work on the channel yet. That is something I want to do more of. And there's a couple in particular. I'm going to start off with this shot of the Huawei P30 Pro, I believe this is. I really like this shot because it works really well for what it was intended for, which is a hero shot of the phone, a promotional image for CNET, for our reviews, for our front page of the website, for our social channels. For that sort of thing, you need an image which really kind of highlights the phone, where it allows the phone to stand out. So it's not too cluttered. It's not the sort of shot that you would see maybe as an advert inside a magazine, where you can do all kinds of different things with staging and try and tell a particular story. You need the phone to really catch the eye. And I think this shot does that really well. It was dead simple. It's a top-down shot, and the background is just two pieces of coloured paper. There's this purple on top and this blue on the bottom, which I've put there, if it isn't clear, because it very much mirrors the phone itself. We've got the basically exact same blue and purple gradient tone on the phone. So it's a very, very simple setup, but it fits the phone extremely well. It shows it off, and certainly by flipping the tones, it highlights the phone even more. The phone stands out. If you'd have had blue against blue and purple against purple, the phone actually might have been a bit lost against it and probably wouldn't have stood out quite so well. So I think this actually works really, really well. I've got two lights on either side pointing down, camera straight down, dead easy shot to do, but I think it's really effective. One of the other product ones that I wanted to show was this one I did of the OnePlus 6. This one is a little bit more of a staged shot, as it were, but again, it's very, very simple and quite elegant. It's very, very soft light. I've done this by basically, again, using pieces of paper. I've got this nice soft pink as a background, and then the same piece of paper, same type of paper, which I've just made into a sort of a rough cone, taped it up, and then that is literally just this cone of paper swirling around. But it means we've just got these very simple forms, this line of paper moving around, very, very gentle, but again, it's effective, and I've strung the phone up to make it look like it's sort of floating out of this cone. I think I particularly like this because the phone itself, we've just got this soft blush pink against the white, the matte white of the phone itself, which is, again, it's very, very elegant, very gentle tones. And I wanted to reflect that in the shot, that it's a bit classier. It's not about dramatic blacks or carbon fiber or anything like that. So these very, very nice tones. And I think it's come out really well. In terms of what I would do differently, I do think that I could have made the paper craft stand out a little bit more. Certainly, there's the corner where it overlaps the phone in front of the phone. It almost blends with the tone of the phone a little bit. So I think I could have done a little bit more work there. But overall, I think for what it is, it stands out really well. And it wasn't too difficult to do. Once I'd kind of created this little mini set in the studio, Getting the shot was pretty straightforward. Yeah, I think it's a nice example of how to take a pretty basic but effective shot, which I think editorially works really well. And maybe this one could be something that you would see maybe in a magazine advert. But it's not too busy. I've not had to like really dress the stage all that much. It works pretty much as it is. I'm going to move on to a few landscape stuff now. I'm going to start off with an old one. This of my favourite, well, my best shot of the aurora, the northern lights taken in Iceland. Now, this one I didn't take necessarily professionally. I did end up using this as a big spread in our magazine. When I went to Iceland, I went there in midsummer, and I didn't expect to see the northern lights at all. Usually, it's something that you'd get more in the winter. So I was really pleased to get such an amazing display like this. It means that this is a shot that really means a lot to me personally, because it was the first time I'd seen them. It just took my breath away. It was just the most incredible scene I've ever seen. And there's a lot that I like about this photo. I love how vibrant the greens are. I love that you get the swirling shape going around the sky. I love the mountains in the distance. And I love we've got some star detail in there as well. And it's, for those reasons, one of my favourite shots that I've done, but it is not a perfect shot, and there's a lot that, in an ideal world, if I knew I was going to get a great display of the Northern Lights, I would do differently. For one, I would move towards the end of where this like rope barrier is, because I think over the other side we've got a lot more... I think it was like a bay that looks around the mountains. And I think just moving there would firstly give a lot more foreground interest. This is what I was talking about in my previous video about my sort of misunderstanding of composition, or just lack of composition altogether. This doesn't really have a lot going on. We've got those mountains, but just moving towards that barrier would have allowed me to get more of that bay in. I may have been able to get more of the mountains, and I could have reframed my shot so I had maybe less of the orange haze that we've got in the bottom left corner. I don't know if that's from cars or buildings, but it does sort of distract the eye a little bit from the scene itself. Now, of course, it's possible that by reframing away from those, I may have not got as much of the actual northern lights in. But looking at this scene where the green is, there's a lot of good information in the middle. So it actually could have worked really, really well as a vertical composition, getting more of those mountains in and getting some more of this bay in the foreground. I can't say that for certain because I don't really remember. This was probably 5 years ago now. In fact, it was 2015. So it's been some time. I don't remember exactly what the landscape looked like, and it was in the middle of the night, so it was difficult to kind of move around too much and see exactly where I could have gone. But if I was there again now, I'd want to make sure that I'm taking the time to get exactly the right composition to make this shot even better. Getting the Northern Lights by itself isn't too difficult. You just need the good conditions for it. And you just need to use like a good long exposure photograph to really kind of get as much light coming into your camera as possible. So the really good photographs that you'll see of the Northern Lights are the ones that also have really incredible composition as well. Like it's a really well thought out landscape scene, and the Northern Lights happen to be there as well, bringing it all together. If you just have one without the other, it doesn't really work. So I'm going to move on now to another landscape, and this is a drone shot actually I did up in Scotland. This was on the North Coast 500 route, really, really far north, and I really like this shot, and it's got a lot going on. Obviously, the obvious things, we've got the rainbow in there. Or actually, we've got a bit of a double rainbow going on, which looks really, really great. I'm really pleased to have captured that. When I saw that rain clouds and that light going on, that's when I sent the drone up because I was shooting down at ground level. We were shooting a Bentley Continental at the time on these roads. And I wanted to send the drone up and try and capture some of this light. I like as well that we've got the road that cuts right in across the landscape. It allows the eye to really follow it along. It goes from left to right, which is a really good compositional rule of how to kind of let things flow in that way. And we've got some nice light on the actual river. Yeah, it's a river. Yeah, a river that's sort of cutting through the scene as well. Again, it's not completely perfect. The quality is pretty poor, and I think that's because I've had to crop in quite a lot. I was shooting on a DJI Mavic. Maybe the first Mavic. It wasn't the one with the Hasselblad camera. It was the one before then. And it's the sensor is decent, but I don't think the light was great, and it was a little bit dim because of the conditions. So I think I've had to boost it quite a bit in post, and I've done quite a bit of color play. Overall, it's just reduced it, so the details don't look great, which is just a little bit of a shame. I also would have liked to have maybe a slightly wider scene. Now, I've tried to find the original version of this, and I don't have it anymore. It may be on a drive somewhere, but I'd like to maybe do a re-edit, see if I can just crop in a little bit less, try and widen up that scene. I'd like to have as well maybe gone a little bit higher, so I'm looking down even more, see a little bit more of that that river going away, and maybe give those mountains in the top of the frame a little bit more breathing room, because it's at the moment it's cutting very close. The frame is just only above those mountains. I'd like to give them a little bit more room, and it could just be by flying a little bit higher, tilting the camera up slightly. We just get a slightly nicer composition. And yeah, anything I could do to increase the detail on it, because certainly where the rainbow hits the ground, where you sort of see the road curve up, yeah, the quality is very poor. So it's a really nice snap, and it works perfectly well for Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, anything like that. But it isn't one that I think would look very good printed up. It isn't one that I would necessarily expect to do a lot with beyond just showing it online. But it's a great scene, and I was very lucky to get those conditions, so no complaints there. Another landscape one that I wanted to show is this shot I did of Lago de Braies. I think I'm pronouncing that right. It's a lovely, beautiful lake in the Dolomites. Now, this is a scene that, again, it's very personal to me in that I went. It was a beautiful road trip that I took for about 3 weeks through across the continent in a camper van. It's an amazing trip, and getting up for sunrise to come and shoot this scene. This was one of the places that I really had on my list as somewhere I really badly wanted to see and visit. And I'm really pleased to have got what I did. And I'll start off with what I really do like. I love those just hints of the orange sunlight on the mountaintops and reflected in the mountains in the water. It looks great. I've gone for this really wide composition, which is actually, it's both a panorama and an HDR blend. So I think it's a 3-panel panorama, and then each one of those was I think a three exposure blend. So highlights, midtones, dark, blend that into an HDR, and then do the same for the other ones, and then blend those together into the panorama. Lightroom does now have a function that automates that, but at the time I had to just do it one by one. So I think it's a really great scene, but that just captures it. It's a very classic view, but it doesn't really do anything beyond that. And this is a area which is photographed to death. It is hugely popular on Instagram. It's an area which so many photographers have been to and have got shots exactly like this. And when I was getting this shot, there was me and a line of other photographers all there getting basically what would have been the same shot. So this is a good example of how, like, if I was maybe in this spot for a little bit longer, I'd have wanted to go round and try a few different compositions and try shooting some different things. But I wasn't, and I didn't. I wanted to make sure I kind of had the hero shot, as it were, like the insurance shot. While I was there, there was this guy who I'm going to go ahead and call a complete asshole, who broke into this boathouse was locked, fully locked up, and he broke into it with his girlfriend, got onto one of the boats, and just started rowing out. Like, despite the fact that there were other photographers who were there, I thought, what an absolute piece of, what an unpleasant person, basically, because quite apart from everyone is there trying to get shots and stuff and going out, but also just like breaking in and just taking the boat because you wanted to go and get the shot. Like, I hate that attitude with photographers, and I see it all the time when I'm out and about, that people think that getting their shot is justification for being a total asshole, and it just isn't. It is not okay to do what you want just for the sake of getting a photo. And that's what they did. And it bugged me. Maybe they got a nice shot, and I've seen plenty of shots of people in this boat, and there's always the one of, pretty girl laying back in the canoe with the beautiful mountains in the background, then it's fine. But again, that is just as cliche as taking just a wide shot of this. So, it would be lovely to have had, 3 or 4 hours to walk around the lake, shoot different things. Obviously, as later in the day you get on, you lose that sunrise. But somewhere I'd definitely like to go back to and see what I can get. I'm not complaining about this shot at all. As I say, I'm really glad that I got this classic view, but I just think there's a lot more that you could do with this scene. Moving on to another bit of a landscape one, there is this one I did of a Porsche Cayenne, which I was shooting up, again, on the North Coast 500 route. This was overlooking Cailescu Bridge, and I love this shot, and I think this is a great example of how I really like to do my automotive photography, because I do a lot of automotive photography for CNET and our other automotive brands, but I don't see myself as an automotive photographer. If you look at my Instagram, it is mostly dominated by car pictures. That's largely because that does pretty well on Instagram. But I see myself fundamentally as a landscape photographer first when I'm approaching cars, because I think, if you just take a photo of a car by itself, it doesn't really say anything. Sure, it shows the car, but you could do it in the studio, and it's a little bit soulless. What I like to do is show the car in an amazing environment. So like the environment comes first. I think about, where do I want to take this car to show it off at its best? Where do I want to do something that looks just incredible and that's going to really tell a story of this car? And certainly for like an SUV like the Cayenne, taking it to somewhere like the rugged Highlands is amazing for that sort of thing. So that's kind of how I approached this. I knew that I wanted to go to Cailescu Bridge. This was about 6 o'clock in the morning. I think it was just pre-sunrise, which is why it is so dark. Certainly on the right side of the scene, I think the sun was just rising on the left, and it was so windy I could barely stand up. So this was ended up being quite a fast shutter speed, which is totally fine. My friend Mark, who was I had driving the car, I had him sort of drive up and down, but at this point he was just parked on the bridge because there were no other cars coming at that time of day, and this was midwinter. So it was dead easy for him to stay in place, for me to frame up the shot and get what I wanted. In terms of what I would do differently with this, honestly, this is one of those shots where I look at where actually I'm really, really happy with what I've done. Maybe I would, if on the edit, I would perhaps take out, there is a little joining line in the road, which does look just a little bit messy. I might take that out purely for cosmetic purposes, but my general rule with anything that I'm doing with Photoshop is that I try not to take out anything which is permanently there. Now, sometimes that I might take out like maybe a particular road sign or a bit of fence or something if it's really spoiling a shot. But usually if it's something which is there and will always be there, I don't take it out. Same rule that I apply to retouching portraits. I might happily take out a little spot if you've got one, because a few days after I've taken that photo, that spot will be gone anyway. Things like moles like I've got or something, I don't take those out. And that's kind of what I'm thinking with this little line. It is there, so it should remain there. What I might want to do though is add a little bit of motion blur to the car wheels to make it look like it's actually traveling, it's actually driving right now, because the wheels are completely static. It just looks like the car is parked there, and it was just parked there. So I think I could maybe do a little bit more there, but I love this shot. It's super dramatic. It's so moody. It fits the look of the scene really, really well. While we're on the topic then of cars, actually, you know what? No, let's go to this one. This was the same car taken in basically the same shot. After the Kylesky Bridge, there is this little bit of car park, and this is when the light really started to come out, and I love this shot. So there's so much going on that I really, really like, again, in that we've got the car, it's looking heroic. I'm shooting from a low angle. I don't often shoot from behind in cars. Normally the hero shot is that front 3/4, but I actually really like this because firstly you get to see that back detail of the car, you see that brake light that goes all the way around. But to me it's almost like either the car or maybe you in the car is sitting looking at this landscape. I think it's quite evocative of just being in the car and enjoying the scene in front of you. And there's so much to enjoy because we've got the mountains, but we've got those incredible clouds and those incredible sunrise colours in those clouds, which I just feel really, really lucky to have got. Those are colours to kill for. So yeah, really, really pleased, and it's sort of slightly reflected in the car park itself, and we've got obviously the colours on the car. Done quite a bit of retouching on the car, a bit of dodging and burning to sort of really bring out those details. The only thing I think I would do differently, I don't know what I would do differently in this one. Yeah, don't get me wrong, this is it's not an award-winning world-class car shot, but nor is it. I don't know. It's sort of it's just good. It's just fine. It's a lovely scene. I don't know how I would shoot this any differently. I would maybe experiment with moving the car into slightly different positions, moving my shooting angle. The left side of the frame is a little bit empty. We've just got that line of hill. So everything's kind of going on the right. The right is where we've got the mountain, and it's where we've got the car. So, it doesn't really feel balanced in that sense, but I don't know how I could change that at the time because that is what the landscape was. That's what I didn't have much time to get the shots because obviously the light was changing so much. So I don't really think I would have done it particularly differently. So yeah, it is what it is. And I could argue as well that, that actually is quite a good shot for a magazine. Having a bit more of an empty frame on the left gives room for graphics or for text or for anything like that. So editorially, it does work quite well. So one of the last car ones that I wanted to show is this one of the Lamborghini Huracan Performante. Shot this in Wales, I think, last year? Was it 2019 or 2018? Sometime in the last couple of years. Again, this is a shot that I'm really pleased with how the different elements have come together. Like, first of all, the car looks great. It just looks amazing, the way the light's coming off it. It's just positioned really, really well in the scene. The road sweeps around the frame. I haven't cut it off on the right. We've still got those posts in there, and it just curves away around that landmass. And I think it's great. I really like having the turbines in the background. It adds a little bit of extra detail to that hillside. I think without them, it would look a little bit empty, particularly because we've got blown out sky in the right side. So I think having those pillars in there just helps break up what would otherwise be a bit of empty space. I don't mind the blown out sky so much because I think it shows that it's a really natural shot. I think had I replaced that sky or maybe copied over the blue we've got in the top left into there, having a fully well exposed sky with everything else, I don't know, I think it would lose a little bit of atmosphere. It really shows that this is the sunrise, that the sun is just going down behind those hillsides there, and it's just giving us that last bit of golden light. We've got those shadows coming across the road from these posts, the shadows going across the hillside. So I think as a result, having that blown out corner of the sky actually really works in this shot. So I don't think I would. I don't think I would try and change that at all. Again, I'd like to see a little bit more dynamic motion in this shot. Um, we didn't have much time because of a fading light and because we were filming the car. So I don't think I would have had time to try panning shots using a slow shutter speed and following the motion of the car to get that motion blur going on. But I also don't really think that I want motion blur. I like that we've got that the road and the landscape itself and this fence is static. But again, I'd maybe like a little bit of motion in the wheels. So that's something that I could potentially put in Photoshop just to give the impression that the car is moving rather than parked. And this actually was moving. I think I shot this at like a thousandth of a second. It wasn't going fast. I think maybe about 30 miles an hour. As Henry Catchpole, who was driving, was just doing some passing by for the film. So yeah, maybe I could have just put a little bit extra there. I think if I really zoomed in on the details, it's not pin sharp because of that motion. So again, I'd like to maybe just taken the time, if I had it, just to make sure that everything was absolutely crystal clear. I would like to experiment with the two additional shots I would like to get. I'm changing very, very little. I'd like to do one at a slightly higher angle, because I'd like to see how that would change getting a bit more of the car's wing in the shot, and maybe get a little bit more of the road going away behind the car. Problem is, I'm not sure if that would lose some of the dramatic stance of the car or not. So maybe I'd like to try another one where I'm going a little bit lower, almost so that the car's wheels are just above this line of the railing. Because right now we're not losing that wing, but we're not seeing it either. It's a little bit in between. So I'd like to kind of make a bit of a definitive decision on whether we're going to see it or not. Okay, another car one while we're on it. I think I said the last one was the last one. It isn't. We've got another one after this. But this is a shot I did of the Aston Martin DBS Superleggera, and I did a whole video on this photo shoot, so I'll make sure to link to that. I will try and remember to put it up above right now. I love shooting that car because it's one of my favourite cars. It's amazing to drive, and I took it up to the Peak District, to roads that I knew well, and really wanted to get some dramatic images of it. And this is a shot that I'm really, really pleased with. It is a Photoshop job. It's not a composite because the car was there, but I have Photoshopped this blur, but because I knew that I wanted to get a shot of it power sliding a little bit round this corner. So I made sure that I set the car up in exactly the position that I would want it on the road. I made sure that it was at an angle that it would be if you were power sliding, because you wouldn't just turn around, it sort of goes sideways. You therefore need that front wheel to be turned into it, and you need more speed on the back wheel. So I've therefore done the motion blur to get the wheel spinning, more so on the back wheel, which would be spinning faster. Obviously, we've then got the tyre smoke going in there, and I've created the motion blur on both the ground and on the fence post, which you blend in because obviously items relatively closer to the camera will be more blurred than things further away, which is why the hills in the distance, there's no blur because they probably wouldn't really be blurred. And I'm really pleased with what I've done, but there are some issues that I have. First of all, in my first edit I did that I put out on social media before taking it down, I realised that there was no driver in the car because I was out taking the shot. So I then sort of went in and Photoshopped. I tried to find any photo I could find of me in the car. And the one I've got, I am in there, but I'm not really looking at the road. It's not a great shot. I think I'm looking down at, because I was parked, so I think I was looking down at the handbrake or something. I don't know what I was doing. But yeah, that's not great. Also, the shadow, I'm fairly certain shouldn't be blurred because the ground would be blurred, but the shadow is moving at the same speed as the car, of course. So it shouldn't have that blur. It should be a little bit out of focus because it's a shadow, and shadows would, particularly with this light, might be a little bit soft. but it is noticeably blurred, and that shouldn't really be the case. So the way that I think a better way of doing this sort of shot, rather than taking a photo of the car in situ on the road and then adding the blur, the better way to do it is to take what's known as a backplate, where you take an empty frame of the landscape without the car in it, and then you add the blur to that, and then you take the shot with the car in it, add the car to the scene, which allows you then to have full control over the background versus the car. I didn't do that, so I had to do it in a little bit of a different way, and I just think I could refine it a little bit more, make it better. I'd also like to put when I'm doing landscapes and when I'm doing anything like this, I like to have honesty in my photography. So I tend not to, I never replace skies, and I tend not to put fake clouds in. But this shot, because I'm already faking this motion, I'm already kind of gone to the point where, okay, it's leaning into digital art more than it is just plain photography. Most of my photography is just photography, and if something wasn't there, I don't put it in. And if I have done something, I make sure that I am making it extremely clear from the outset in all my Instagram posts, anything like that, that I have done work on it. So if I'm already going to do the motion blur, what I'd also like to do is stop making that sky so empty. I could put in some interesting cloud detail in there and just put something else which just stops it just being empty blue. It might not work super well, but we've got a little bit of cloud that's sort of cut off in the top left, and I don't like that it's just this one little patch that isn't really, it's neither here nor there. Either have no clouds and have this pure empty sky with the car looking cool underneath it, or have a little bit of cloud detail in there. So that's how I would do that one a little bit differently. Now, the last car one, we actually are on the last one now, is this shot I did of the Rolls-Royce Dawn. Now, this one is, it's been sort of retouched and color corrected, but this is a single frame of the Rolls-Royce Dawn taken beneath the Milky Way. Now, this is a shot that I did with Carfection. They had the idea of doing a video about the Rolls-Royce Dawn, and they wanted the Milky Way because the hardtop version of this car has got these little lights put into the roof, so when you're sitting inside, it looks like you've got a galaxy of stars above you, and apparently it looks beautiful. With the soft top version that goes down, you don't get that. So their video was all about going and finding those stars, which was lovely. It was great to shoot. We found a dark sky reserve in Cornwall, and we were there for 2 nights, shooting through the night to get everything we needed. For the most part, I was trying to stay out of the way because they were trying to shoot time-lapse video and all kinds of other things, and I was just there for stills. But I haven't lit this shot. This is all natural light. It's just a very, very long exposure and quite a high ISO. I feel very, very lucky that the angle I used, because I don't really know how much I can't remember how much I planned this, but the line, the galactic core as it's called, that you see of the Milky Way goes down into the car. It actually goes into that open top. It's perfect. Couldn't have planned it any better. You know what? You weren't there. I planned it like that. I think I love it, and I'm split on the car itself. So here are a couple of the problems that I've got. One, I think my angle could have been a little bit better because it is. The car's there, but again, the horizon line is above it, and it's not. It could have just looked a little bit better. I think I could have maybe got slightly lower down, maybe change my lens, use a different angle. I don't want to get rid of any of the sky, of course. The sky is still the hero, really, of this shot. But I think I could have just tried a slightly different composition. The problem is that if I got lower, you can see that already this sort of grass bank is already cutting off that back wheel just a little bit. So I would worry that if I got lower, it would just end up cutting off more of the car. The other thing I'd have liked to have done is tried lighting the car as well, just to help it stand out, because it is all natural light. That line of light we're seeing is the reflection of the sunrise that we're getting going on. And as a result, I've had to boost it quite a lot in Photoshop. The quality has been lost. I've had to do Quite a bit of work to get it back, and as a result, again, this is one that would be fine for Instagram and is fine for just online, but it wouldn't necessarily look amazing in print. So I'd like to just see what it looks like by adding just an extra little bit of light, maybe a little bit of light painting with an LED panel just running it across the top. The downside is that could well make it look overly fake and photoshopped. It could look like a composite. If that car is too lit and stands out, then you're just going to look at it and think, well, no, you've just taken a picture of the Milky Way and put a car in it. Whereas now it looks exactly like what it is. We took the car to the middle of nowhere and sat there for hours on end to get this shot. So, but I'd like to have the option of just seeing what it looks like. So maybe that's something I could have tried to do. The only other thing that's in this that I debated is what we've got. What I'm fairly certain is a shooting star in the middle of the frame. Now, it could be a plane, but surely a plane would make a line all the way across the sky. This is something which has entered the atmosphere and then left it. So I'm pretty sure that little slash can only be a shooting star. Correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe it's a UFO. But yeah, so I kept that in because I thought this looks pretty cool. You know, a big line of like a plane, you know, white, red from the plane's lights going straight across. I'd have got rid of that because it doesn't look very good, but I think that looks pretty cool. Okay, I'm going to move on from cars altogether now, except no, I'm not, because I forgot there is one more that I just wanted to talk about. And this is a shot I did of the McLaren 570 GT. I took this on a road trip a few years ago as part of testing a Samsung Galaxy S9 phone. And I found this, I was going through either Germany or Switzerland. I think I was in Germany by this point. And I found this like little logging path off the side of the road. The road that I was on is going away kind of in the distance. And I really liked that juxtaposition of incredible supercar, doors up and everything, looking futuristic and amazing and everything that it looks. But then you've got this dirt track and these tree logs and stuff, and I just thought that was quite a cool bit of contrast between those two elements. And I like this shot for that reason. I don't dislike the toning I've done. I've gone for a bit of a filmic look. It's obviously quite desaturated. And as part of a series of images, it works quite well. But I don't think it really necessarily works as a standalone image. One of the problems that I've got is that I really would have liked to have spent more time refining this composition. I've evidently stood on these logs, but I think I could have got my camera closer to them. It looks like my camera position is maybe 2 or 3 feet above those logs. I'd like to have got the camera right up against them so that they're coming straight out of frame, and the car is, you know, they form the leading line pointing towards the car. I think that could have looked really, really cool. I didn't do that, and as a result, they are there and they're forming sort of this little curve in the side of a frame, but it just could have been a lot stronger. We've also just got, because of the nature of it being a logging road, we've got quite a bit of debris behind the car, and I think by getting lower, the car's roof would have started to cover some of that and would have instead just got those trees in the background instead. So we don't even need to Photoshop out that debris. We could have just refined our composition and just made the scene a little bit neater. Otherwise, I think it's perfectly fine, but it's a nice snap, and I can tell that I put some thought into it, but I think I haven't put enough thought into it. I think I definitely think that in the last few years I have developed quite a lot, in that I've really tried to I don't know, I've really tried to think a lot more about how I'm taking photos. I've tried to critique my own shots, which is kind of why I'm doing this. It's important to look at your own stuff and think, okay, well, what could I have done better? Like, what do I like about it? Which is always important, to highlight what you think is really good about a shot, and then what you think you could do better next time. And I've really tried to do that more and more. And I think that is an example of this here, in that I was kind of shooting quickly. And I often am guilty of shooting very, very quickly, particularly on trips like this when I'm by myself and I'm trying to cover. On this trip, I was trying to cover about 1,500 miles in about 2 days, and so it was quick. I was having to do about 8 hours of driving a day, and so it meant that I would see a scene, stop, quickly get out of the car, run, shoot what I can. Okay, get back in, off I go. I didn't have time to go on side roads. I only really stuck to the main roads, and when I saw little pull-in places like this, I would get out and get what I could. So it's not always possible to really spend that time and really craft it. But here, I'd evidently had time to get on these logs as it is. I could have just moved a little bit more down and just got something else. I didn't, and it's fine. Okay, moving on to what is actually now the last shot that I want to show you. And it is this one that I did of the London Air ambulance. Excuse the watermark that I put in the bottom left corner. I watermarked this when I had them on CNET, but I can't find the originals of this anymore, so I haven't been able to find a version without it. I love this shot because it is super dramatic. I went up to photograph the London Air ambulance helicopter and its crew as part of a big feature that I was doing for CNET. They just started using an app, an iPad app with 4G, which cut down their response times by something like 4 minutes, which is absolutely massive for these guys. It is the difference between life and death. So it was a really, really interesting tech story, and I went up to photograph them on location. This is on top of their helipad, on top of their hospital in Whitechapel in East London. It's about 15 stories up. Very, very tricky to kind of get to, as I had to go on those like bits around the edge, and I don't like heights, so I didn't necessarily love it. But we had really great conditions, as you could see. This was about 6 o'clock in the morning. The helicopter had just come into land, and the crew was out there doing some inspections, sorting out gear and whatnot. And I just really liked it as a story. And it was actually the Photography Community 500 Pixels, their blog, interviewed me about this series. And I'm really, really pleased with it as an example of my photojournalism rather than just pure photography. Because this was a story that I was really, really interested in, that I'd really chased down, and and as a result, I feel that's had a really great benefit for the shots, because I'm the one writing the story. So rather than just being a writer and a publication sends a photographer out to get some shots and they're not really sure what to do, or having a writer who doesn't really know how to take photos, I knew exactly what I wanted to get from both the written side and from the photos of this shot. And as a result, I've got a series of dramatic images. There are some other ones in this. I took this, I think, pretty much natural light. I from a lot of them, I did use just a Canon speed light, which I had off camera on a little cord, so I can just hold it up. And it's brought out enough detail on the helicopter that it's there. We've got the London skyline in the background. I made sure to use an angle where we've got the Canary Wharf buildings there, so it's unmistakably London. And again, as I was saying before, in terms of taking things out, we've got those contrails in the sky from planes that have gone overhead, but I actually quite like it. It's adding a little bit of detail to the sky. And I love that we're shooting into the sun, and I did do that intentionally. Normally, obviously it's a big no, but I was trusting that the dynamic range of the 6D that I was on, it was full frame, I'd be able to pull back a lot of detail. And I didn't have filters on this. I didn't have like a grad ND that's darkening just the sky. I shot this just without any filters at all. And I'm really pleased with how I've been able to get that sunburst in there and still get so much detail on the helicopter itself. In terms of doing things differently, I would have just lowered my angle ever so slightly so that we can maybe see the horizon line underneath the helicopter. I just kind of, I'm looking at it now, and I just kind of want to go, just look under it a little bit, and you can't quite. And I just think that would have helped bring it together a little bit more. The downside, it might have meant that we don't see quite as much of the Canary Wharf skyline, so swings and roundabouts. But again, I'd like to have tried that. I also, now shooting this, probably would have gone with at least a circular polarizer on my camera. As you twist it, it might have helped darken down the sky a little bit. But I like what I've done. I've been very heavy with like vignettes and graduated filters in post to really darken down those skies. It's a little bit too much, but I wanted it to have this big, powerful impact. I want it to really pop off the screen when people are coming and looking at these articles. So I actually don't think I would do that any differently now. And if I actually, let's have a look at just one more from that series, because actually, let's just look at one more from the series. This was the pilot flying the helicopter. And again, I've used this. We've got the sun right behind him, so it's casting this very strong shadow towards the camera. So I have used just a speed light to light him up. And I am, even now, quite surprised that just I think it was a 580 EXRT Canon's one. I'm surprised that was powerful enough to light him up as much as it has done, despite the fact that there's such a strong amount of sunlight going on. But I've got this low angle with him, so he looks super heroic. We've got his helicopter in the background. I think this looks really, really cool. They loved it. The story did really well. So I am super, super pleased. And one more from the scene, which again is one that I really love, is this is just as they landed. The helicopter is there. Its wings are coming down. We've got that big sunburst going on. And we've got the fire... I don't know if he's fire marshal or he's the fire officer that sort of goes out and does the security checks to make sure that no fuel has leaked or anything like that. And because he's got these reflective bits, when I've used my flash, has really lit him up. Without that flash, you'd have barely been able to see him. As you can see, the rest of his boiler suit is black, so he'd have just basically been a big black shape. So by using that light, we have lit that up a little bit. So yeah, I think as a series, I'm really, really pleased with how these shots came out. I think they work really, really well to go with the story. And yeah, I'd love to do more things like that, and I certainly will be once we can start going back outside and shooting stories out and about again. That does bring me to the end, and I really hope this has been helpful. I hope it doesn't just come across as here's a bunch of photos that I'm really proud of and I want to show things. But you know, if you're proud of your photography, you want to show it off. But I hope that hearing a little bit about kind of what I wanted to achieve from these shots and a little bit of kind of what I have to go through, because these are all shots that pretty much, with the exception of no, I think these are all shots that I have these have been published professionally, so these are all ones that I have taken either for CNET or for pretty much they have been used by CNET and stuff in the magazine. So hopefully it is helpful to kind of know the steps I would go through to take my shots professionally, rather than some of the ones you've seen in my videos so far, which have very much just been for my personal collection. If you have enjoyed this video, please do hit that like button, subscribe if you don't already. It is super helpful, and we've got some great stuff coming up. It's been a pleasure to have so many of you getting involved in the channel so far. I love getting your comments. I try and reply to every single one of them, and I really look forward to getting some more. But for now, that's it for me, and I will see you next time.